everyone, and welcome back to the Cisco Optics Podcast, where we talk about pluggable optics for networks. Manufacturing of optics has been historically cumbersome compared to electronics. With optics, you have to align components and glue them down or laser weld them. It was often done by hand because there wasn't enough volume to justify developing fancy robots. Compare this with electronics, where you put tons of devices on a single wafer and stamp them out in a highly automated fab. After years of effort, we finally have a way to stamp out optics too. It's called silicon photonics. The beauty is, we didn't have to reinvent the wheel. It leverages the existing CMOS infrastructure that was already there. This is episode 15, and we start a new conversation with Ron Horan. Ron joined Cisco through the Luxtera acquisition in 2019. Luxtera was spun out of a Caltech group of professors and students, and was known for its groundbreaking approach to silicon photonics. We begin our conversation with his background, and then he explains Luxtera's history. Ron attended the University of Texas at San Antonio for both his bachelor's and master's degrees. His master's thesis topic, entitled Synthetic Vision Landing Aid System, was patented as the first GPS-based aircraft landing aid. From 1994 to 1999, while at Compaq, he earned 15 patent awards. In 2001, he joined Broadcom Corporation, where he managed field applications engineering for the compute segment team, ran program management in the networking BU, and was a senior director of sales and strategic account manager covering the Hewlett-Packard worldwide account. In 2011, Ron moved to Luxtera, where he worked as vice president of sales before moving into the role as vice president of marketing. Luxtera was eventually acquired by Cisco in 2019, where Ron now runs product management for the Cisco Client Optics Group. Everyone's journey is unique, and somehow they all seem to land at Cisco. If you haven't already, please subscribe to this podcast. On Apple Podcasts, you would follow us now. Depending on which platform you use, we may be part of the Cisco Podcast Network. Check out our blog at blogs.cisco.com. Search on hashtag Cisco Optics Blog. All one word, no hyphen, and no spaces. You'll find podcast notes and links there too. For our YouTube playlist, go to youtube.com and search on Cisco Optics. And for product information, go to cisco.com/go/optics. And now, join me as I talk with Ron Horan. Hi, Ron. How are you doing?
Hey, Pat. Doing pretty good.
How are things in SoCal?
Well, good. It's finally starting to cool down. Surfing is still really good. The water's warm, and trying to surf as much as I possibly can.
Oh, nice. I didn't know you were a surfer.
Yeah.
So, can you, for listeners, can you just, state your position and what do you do, just so people know?
Yeah, so my name's Ron Horan. I actually came over from the Luxtera acquisition. Cisco purchased Luxtera in 2019, and I was the vice president of marketing for Luxtera. Now I run product management for Cisco. So for basically Cisco internally developed products, primarily that sell into web scale customers.
Where were you before you joined Luxtera?
I worked at Broadcom for 12 years. And when I was at Broadcom, I worked with Greg, who was the CEO of Luxtera. And he basically asked me to come over to join him at Luxtera back in 2011. So it's been about 10 years since I joined up at Luxtera and now Cisco.
Oh, okay. Well, I didn't know that. So you and Greg go way back.
We go back to around 2000.
Wow.
So that's when I first met him, I think. So it's been over 20
So that
years.
was before Broadcom then?
No, that was at Broadcom. We both joined Broadcom at about the same time.
Oh, okay.
Which was in 1999, 2000 timeframe.
Okay. So tell me a bit about the Luxtera history. How did it get started? Because I think it started during the boom, right? but it probably went through stages like a lot of startups did, at least the ones that survived.
Yeah, so actually it's really interesting. Luxtera. So you've heard of Jet Propulsion Laboratories, and I don't know if you know their story,
of course,
but
yeah.
JPL basically was a spin out of Caltech in Pasadena, California. Basically, what happened is I think it was 4 students were trying to create rocket fuel, and they blew up the chemistry lab. And so what they did was they basically put them in. They got, instead of expelling them, they actually got them a warehouse where they could run experiments, and that's actually how JPL got started. And so,
I didn't know that story. What do you know? Around what year that was?
Oh gosh, I don't know. It was back in the 1960s or 70s, I imagine.
Oh, that late? I thought it was much older than that.
It could be. I honestly don't know when that happened, but
okay.
Luxtera has a similar story, actually. So Luxtera was a spin out of Caltech University. A professor there, and actually, I think it was 4 guys who were associated with Caltech, basically spun out Luxtera. Originally, Luxtera was based in Pasadena, and ultimately moved down to Carlsbad, California. The reason is because they wanted to be between Broadcom and Qualcomm, so that they could get mixed signal designers, because they're obviously Broadcom and Qualcomm have a lot of mixed signal work going on. So just to get into an area where the talent was located. And so that's, so Luxtera was founded in 2003. It was actually, it wasn't.
Oh, so it's post boom then. It was after the crash.
Yeah.
Crash was pretty much 2001, right?
Yeah. And so it was founded in 2003. Actually, obviously they didn't invent silicon photonics. I think silicon photonics was invented like in 1986 or 87.
Yeah, there's like one paper where someone coined the term.
Yeah.
In 86, I think. Yeah.
And so, basically, while Luxtera didn't found silicon photonics, it was the first company to actually productize a transceiver, or actually any real product based on silicon photonics. Now, if you knew that, I
didn't. I knew that there was. I mean, silicon photonics has been such a buzzword for so many years, and I personally kind of lost track of all the frenzy of activity.
I think Luxtera was involved in silicon photonics before silicon photonics became cool.
Okay.
And so in roughly 2008, 2009, basically you had a bunch of, really smart technical people running the company, but there was really no, they were more interested in just doing the research and the, than they were productizing products. And so I think it was 2009. And so that's really when Luxtera kicked off developing the actual products that they went out to market. I think the first product was a 4x10 gig optics transceiver. And then it's basically, obviously the speeds and the densities and,
Was it an AOC or was it a pluggable transceiver?
It started off as an AOC. And then what happened is in 2011, I believe, that part of the business got divested to Molex. Molex was one of the original investors. So Molex purchased the AOC business from Luxtera. And then Luxtera basically continued. It was interesting. I think when they first, by that time I had joined the company, and when we first started developing optics transceiver modules, we weren't quite sure exactly where they would go, right? We were kind of developing a module without really knowing exactly what market those would go in. Ultimately, it was decided, that we were single mode fiber based, single mode fiber based solutions, which basically had the advantage of reach. You could get reach without the penalties of chromatic dispersion. And I think ultimately, after a lot of trial and error, we determined that the data center applications inside the data center up to 10 kilometers was really the sweet spot for us. So roughly between 300 meters and 10 kilometers was is kind of our niche. And so that's where we put the focus on. I'm trying to remember, I believe it was a 100 gig BiDi product. It was a 2 lambda 100 gig BiDi product that we went off and we developed. However, it never by the time it got to it was production worthy, the market had kind of moved, and so it never really actually saw the light of day. However, we actually use those a lot of the technologies that were developed as part of that project went into our WDM type products, so multi-wavelength products. Whereas before we had been primarily a single wavelength, parallel optics products, like a 4x10 or 4x14 or 4x25.
So that BiDi project started the design effort to have the filtering functionality. Is that how it happened?
It really, what came out of that was really some of the signal processing, just processing technologies. But more importantly, what came out of that was the WDM technology. So now we had parallel products, like a 4x type products, and then we had the duplex products would be like 100 gig, CWDM4 type products. And so I think at some point it was decided in 2018 that, as a startup, we had to make a choice. We had to go either public or we had to get acquired by somebody. We looked at Cisco, and Cisco basically was just such an outstanding company that it was a no-brainer.
Well, I'm glad that was a choice, Cisco. So let's get into silicon photonics. I think you mentioned earlier that was the first part of my conversation with Ron Horan. Next time, we'll get into silicon photonics. Subscribe to this podcast, and we'd really appreciate you helping to get the word out. Share this with friends and colleagues that come to mind when you think of network technology and optics. And leave a review on Apple Podcast. We're also on all the other major podcast platforms. You may see the Cisco Podcast Network come up when you search for Cisco Optics Podcast. That's where we live, and you can find other great podcasts there too. And check out the Cisco Optics blogs at blogs.cisco.com and search on hashtag Cisco Optics blog, no spaces and no hyphens. We also have educational videos on YouTube. Just go to youtube.com and search on Cisco Optics. Thank you for listening. This is Pat Chow, Product Manager at Cisco Optics. The next episode is part 2 of my conversation with Ron Horan. Until next time.